I still remember the day it all started to unravel. It was a Tuesday evening in October. The Boston air was just starting to get that familiar chill. I'm a 32-year-old software developer named Creighton, and for 3 years I thought Jessica and I had built something real together. We shared an apartment dreams, and what I believed was trust, until she sat across from me at our dining table with an expression I had never seen before and said those words that made my stomach drop. Something in my gut told me this was not right. If you have ever had your trust broken by someone you loved, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you might want to see how this ends. Our story began at my college friend Mark's wedding. Jessica was a bridesmaid, and I was a groomsman. We were paired to walk down the aisle together, and from that moment something clicked between us. She had this infectious laugh that could light up a room, and when she talked about her passion for graphic design, her eyes sparkled in a way that pulled me in completely. We discovered we both loved hiking the trails around New England, cooking exotic recipes we found online, and spending weekends at independent film festivals. Our first date was at a tiny Ethiopian restaurant where we both tried injera bread for the first time. I remember thinking how perfectly her hand fit in mine as we walked back to her apartment that night. After 18 months of dating, it just made sense for us to move in together. I found us a 2-bedroom apartment in Cambridge close enough to both our offices that we could walk to work when the weather permitted. The extra room became our shared office space with her design station by the window and my programming setup in the corner. I handled most of our rent since my software development job paid considerably more than her position at a local marketing firm. It seemed like we were building towards something permanent. When her old car finally died beyond repair, I offered to help her finance a new one. Her credit score was not great due to some student loan issues from before we met. The dealership suggested putting the car in my name to get a better interest rate, with the understanding that we would transfer it to her name once her credit improved. The silver Toyota Corolla was technically mine on paper, but in every other way it was hers. She drove it to work daily, chose the air freshener scent, and paid for half the monthly payments. I never thought twice about this arrangement because I trusted her completely. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs that I ignored. About 6 months before everything fell apart, Jessica started keeping her phone face down whenever we were together. She would take calls in another room, claiming it was work-related or just family stuff that I would find boring. Her screen would light up with text notifications, and she would snatch the phone away before I could see who they were from. Her work schedule became increasingly unpredictable. There were late nights at the office for client emergencies and weekend workshops that she never seemed able to provide many details about. When I offered to bring her dinner during these late sessions, she always had a reason why it was not convenient. The physical distance between us grew as well. She stopped reaching for my hand during movies. Our goodnight kisses became quick pecks rather than the lingering moments we used to share. When I initiated intimacy, there was always a headache or early morning meeting the next day. I told myself we were just going through a normal phase that all long-term couples experience. Most telling was when she began canceling our weekend plans. We had a tradition of monthly hiking trips to different trails throughout New England. These outings had been sacred to us, but suddenly there were always reasons to postpone or cancel entirely. Work deadlines, feeling under the weather, family obligations all became common excuses. Then came that Tuesday evening. I had picked up ingredients to cook her favorite pasta dish, hoping to reconnect over a nice dinner. She barely touched her food, pushing it around her plate while avoiding eye contact. Finally, she put down her fork and looked up at me. "Creighton, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her voice uncharacteristically formal. "What is it? Is everything okay?" I asked already, feeling my chest tighten. "I need some space," she said. "Some time to myself to think about things. Think about what things I asked, confused by this sudden declaration. Just us, my life direction, everything. I feel like I have not had time to myself in so long, and I need to clear my head." Her words were rehearsed as though she had practiced this speech. "Is there something specific that is bothering you? Something we can work on together?" I reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. "No, it is not like that. I just need some time alone. I was thinking 2 weeks minimum, where we do not contact each other. I will stay with my friend Allison. She would not meet my eyes as she said this. 2 whole weeks with no contact at all. That seems extreme, Jessica. Please respect this, Creighton. I need this. If you love me, you will give me this space without questioning me or checking up on me. There was an edge to her voice I had never heard before. Okay, I finally agreed against my better judgment. If that is what you need, I will respect your wishes. She packed a suitcase that night, claiming she had already arranged to stay at Allison's place. As she walked out the door, she turned and said, "Remember, no calls or texts. I will reach out when I am ready." There was no kiss goodbye, no warm embrace, just the sound of the door closing behind her. The first few days without Jessica were strange. Our apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I buried myself in work, stayed late at the office, and agreed to every social invitation my friends extended. I was determined to respect her request for space, even though everything about it felt wrong to me. I did not call her. I did not text. I deleted the social media apps from my phone to avoid the temptation to check her profiles. I was determined to be the supportive boyfriend she needed me to be, giving her the time she had asked for without interruption. 5 days into Jessica's space period, my phone lit up with a text from my friend Ryan. "Dude, have you seen Jessica's Instagram?" he wrote, followed by several screenshots. My stomach dropped as I looked at the images on my screen. There was Jessica not at her friend Allison's apartment, as she had claimed, but on a beach in Cabo, San Lucas. And she was not alone. Her arms were wrapped around Tyler, her ex-boyfriend, from before we met. In one photo, they were kissing at sunset. In another, they were toasting with margaritas, the caption reading, "Finally reunited with my true love." Some people are just meant to find their way back to each other. The timestamps showed she had posted these just 3 days after asking me for space, and according to the geotag, they had left for Mexico the very day after our conversation. This was not a spontaneous trip, but something that must have been planned well in advance. Something she had been hiding from me while living in our shared home, sleeping in our shared bed. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. All the air left my lungs as the reality of her betrayal sank in. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold my phone. I called Ryan immediately. "I am so sorry, man," he said when he picked up. "I thought you should know. How long has this been going on?" I managed to ask. "I do not know for sure, but Maria said she heard Jessica talking to someone about Tyler as far back as last spring." Maria was Jessica's coworker who we occasionally socialized with. Last spring, that is more than 6 months ago. We were fine 6 months ago. At least I thought we were. My mind was racing, trying to reconcile the relationship I thought we had with this new, horrible reality. I spent the rest of the evening calling mutual friends, and the picture that emerged was devastating. Jessica had apparently been in contact with Tyler for most of our relationship. They had never truly stopped talking. Several friends admitted they had suspected something but did not want to get involved or hurt me without concrete proof. One friend even confessed that Jessica had told her she was settling with me until something better came along. The next day I opened our shared laptop to look for any other evidence. We both used it occasionally, and Jessica had apparently forgotten to log out of her email. There I found confirmation of hotel reservations in Cabo booked 3 weeks earlier. There were also email chains with Tyler going back more than a year, full of intimate exchanges and plans to reunite. I dug deeper and found online receipts for gifts Tyler had sent her, gifts she had hidden from me or claimed were from female friends. There were restaurant charges on our joint credit card account for meals on days she claimed to be working late, always for 2 people at romantic spots across the city. The most painful discovery was a draft of an unsent email to her sister, dated 2 months earlier. "Amy, I know you think what I am doing to Creighton is wrong, but Tyler is the one I have always wanted. I am just waiting for the right time to break things off with C. The condo Tyler is buying will be ready in January, and then we can finally be together openly. Please stop judging me for this." I felt physically ill. The extent of her deception was staggering. It was not just an impulsive mistake or a recent development. This had been a calculated long-term betrayal, while she continued to accept my love, my financial support, and the life we had built together. With shaking hands, I called Jessica's sister, Amy. We had always gotten along well, and I needed to hear the truth from someone in Jessica's inner circle. Amy answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. "Creighton, I have been expecting your call," she said quietly. "So you knew?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Amy sighed heavily. "Yes, not everything but enough. I tried to talk her out of it, Creighton. I told her what she was doing to you was cruel." "How long has this been going on?" "Tyler reached out to her about a year ago. They started meeting for coffee, which turned into lunches, which turned into two more. She has been talking about getting back together with him for months. I am so sorry. You did not deserve any of this." Did everyone know except me? The humiliation was almost as painful as the betrayal. Not everyone, but some people. Jessica swore those of us who knew to secrecy. She said she would end things with you properly when she got back from Mexico. Amy's voice was thick with regret. "I should have told you. I just convinced myself it was not my place." That night I hit rock bottom. I sat alone in our apartment, looking at old photos of Jessica and me, remembering all the moments I had treasured, that now seemed like elaborate lies. I drank too much whiskey and fell asleep on the couch, unable to face our bed. When I woke the next morning with a pounding headache and swollen eyes, something had changed inside me. The initial shock and pain had crystallized into something harder, clearer. I would not let Jessica's betrayal destroy me. Instead, I would reclaim my dignity and my life. My first step was to call my law school friend Jordan for advice. We met for coffee that afternoon, and I laid out the whole situation, including the car that was in my name, but that Jessica had been driving. "Legally speaking, you are in the clear with the car," Jordan confirmed. "It is in your name, you are on the loan. It is your property. She has no legal claim to it, regardless of any verbal agreement you had." "What about the apartment?" I asked. "Whose names are on the lease?" "Just mine. Jessica never got around to being added officially, though we talked about it." "Then you are within your rights to change the locks, though you should check with your landlord first," Jordan advised. "As for her possessions, you cannot destroy them or dispose of them, but you can certainly pack them up and deliver them elsewhere. So basically, I can do whatever I want with my car, and as long as I secure her belongings properly, I can limit her access to the apartment," I clarified. "Correct. Just make sure you document everything, and keep all communications civil and factual. Do not give her any ammunition to claim harassment or wrongdoing on your part." With Jordan's advice in mind, I began planning methodically. I started by taking photos of every room in the apartment, documenting all possessions. I created a detailed inventory of what belonged to Jessica versus what was mine or jointly owned. For shared purchases, I was fair, even generous, designating anything she had expressed particular attachment to as hers. I gathered all evidence of her betrayal, the screenshots, emails, text messages, and saved them in a secure folder, not to share with anyone, but to remind myself if my resolve weakened. Next, I purchased sturdy moving boxes and began carefully packing Jessica's personal belongings, her clothes, books, toiletries, the art supplies. She collected her vinyl record collection. I labeled each box meticulously and treated everything with respect, despite my anger. This wasn't about destroying her things. It was about cleanly separating our lives. I called our landlord, explained that Jessica and I had broken up, and asked permission to change the locks. Since only my name was on the lease, he agreed, recommending a locksmith who could do the job quickly. I scheduled the lock change for the following day. The most satisfying call was to a local car dealership. I explained that I wanted to sell my Toyota Corolla, the car Jessica had been driving. They offered me a fair price, especially since the car was only 2 years old and in excellent condition. I accepted immediately and arranged to bring it in the next morning. With each step of my plan falling into place, I felt a sense of control returning. This was not about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and my self-respect. Jessica had made her choice, and now I was making mine. The next morning, I drove the Corolla to the dealership one last time. As I handed over the keys and signed the paperwork, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The money from the sale went directly into my account, and I decided to use it to upgrade my home office, completely new desk chair, monitors, everything, a fresh start. When I returned home, the locksmith was waiting. Within an hour, new locks were installed on both the main entrance and the back door. I tucked the new keys into my pocket, feeling a small sense of satisfaction. The final step was dealing with Jessica's packed belongings. I had initially considered having them waiting outside the apartment, but that felt unnecessarily harsh and potentially problematic if something got damaged or stolen. Instead, I rented a small moving truck and drove everything to her parents' house, which was only about 30 minutes away. Her mother answered the door, surprised to see me. I explained the situation as calmly and factually as possible, without anger or accusation. To her credit, she looked deeply embarrassed by her daughter's behavior and helped me unload the boxes into their garage without argument. "I am sorry it ended this way, Creighton," she said as I prepared to leave. "We always thought you were good for her." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, genuinely appreciating her kindness in an awkward situation. Before leaving, I handed her a sealed envelope. "This is a letter for Jessica explaining everything. There is also a list of everything I brought here and a copy of the car sale documents. Please make sure she gets this when she returns." The letter was factual and unemotional. It explained that I had discovered her deception, outlined the steps I had taken, and wished her well with Tyler. I made it clear that our relationship was irrevocably over and requested no contact. There was no name-calling, no bitter accusations, just a clear, dignified ending. With Jessica's belongings delivered and the letter written, all that remained was to wait for her return and the inevitable confrontation. I spent the intervening time focused on healing. I started therapy, joined a gym, and leaned on true friends who stood by me. There were moments of weakness, of course. Late at night, I sometimes found myself reaching for my phone, tempted to check her social media or even to call her. But I had blocked her on all platforms and deleted her number to protect myself from those impulses. The 2 weeks of her space request passed, and based on her social media that friends continued to monitor for me, she had extended her romantic getaway with Tyler. It was nearly 3 weeks after she had walked out when my phone finally rang with an unknown number that I suspected was hers. "My key does not work," she said without preamble when I answered. "No, it does not," I confirmed calmly. "And my car is not in the parking space." "No, it is not." There was a long pause. "Can you let me in? We need to talk." "I will come down," I said, and ended the call. When I opened the main entrance door to our apartment building, Jessica was standing there with her suitcase tanned from her vacation, her expression a mixture of confusion and the beginning of anger. "What is going on, Creighton? Why did you change the locks? And where is my car?" "You asked for space, Jessica. I am giving you permanent space." My voice was steady, betraying none of the emotional turmoil of the past weeks. "I sold the car that was in my name. Your belongings are at your parents' house, along with a letter explaining everything. Your mother has been expecting you." Her face went from confusion to shock. "You sold my car. You cannot do that. It was my car legally. Check the title if you do not believe me." "But we had an agreement." Her voice was rising now, drawing the attention of a neighbor walking past. "We had a lot of agreements, Jessica. Fidelity was one of them. Honesty was another." I met her eyes directly. "I know about Tyler. I know about the trip you planned while still living with me. I know about the emails, the gifts, the dinners. I know everything." The color drained from her face. "Creighton, I can explain. There is no need. Your things are safe at your parents'. The letter has all the details you need, including documentation of the car sale." I stepped back inside the doorway. "I wish you well with Tyler. I hope he is everything you believe he is. You cannot just throw away 3 years like this." Anger was replacing her shock now. "This is my home too. It stopped being your home when you chose to lie to me and betray me. My name is on the lease, just like my name was on the car. You made your choice, Jessica. Now I have made mine." As I prepared to close the door, her anger suddenly crumbled, and tears filled her eyes. "Please, Creighton. I made a mistake. Tyler and I, it was just a fantasy. It is not real like what we have. Please give me another chance." For a brief moment I felt a pang in my chest, the echo of the love I had once felt for her, but it passed, quickly replaced by the certainty that I deserved better than what she had done to me. "Goodbye, Jessica," I said quietly, and closed the door. Through the peephole, I watched as she stood there for several minutes, alternating between tears and angry muttering. Eventually, she pulled out her phone, made a call, and shortly after an Uber arrived to take her away. As I turned and walked back up to my apartment, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. A chapter of my life had ended, but for the first time in weeks, I was looking forward to writing the next one myself. The weeks following my confrontation with Jessica were challenging in ways I had not anticipated. She made multiple attempts to contact me, calls, texts, from new numbers, emails, pleading for another chance. Each time I maintained the boundary I had established, responding only once with a brief message asking her to respect my decision and cease communication. Her narrative to our mutual friends shifted rapidly. At first, she painted herself as the victim of my extreme overreaction to what she described as a brief indiscretion. When that gained little sympathy, she switched to claiming our relationship had been broken for months and I had been emotionally unavailable. Finally, when neither version earned her the support she wanted, she began acknowledging her wrongdoing and expressing remorse, though always with the qualifier that I had been unnecessarily cruel in my response. Friends chose sides, as friends often do in breakups. Some distanced themselves from both of us, uncomfortable with the drama. Others reached out to offer support, sometimes sharing their own stories of betrayal and recovery. I was surprised by who stood by me and who did not, but each revelation helped me understand who my true friends were. The loneliness was the hardest part. Despite the betrayal, I missed the routine of sharing my day with someone, the comfort of another person's presence in the apartment. I missed having someone to cook for, to watch movies with, to plan weekends around. Some nights the silence felt deafening. I struggled with the urge to check her social media. Had she gone back to Tyler? Were they living together in that condo he had been buying? Was she happy? Miserable? I had to constantly remind myself that her life was no longer my concern, that knowing these things would only prolong my pain. But as weeks turned into months, something began to shift. I started to reclaim the spaces in my apartment that had been shaped by Jessica's presence. I rearranged the furniture, painted the walls, a different color hung new artwork. Each change helped erase the visual reminders of our life together and created an environment that was wholly mine. The money from selling the car funded not only my new home office setup, but also cooking classes, something I had always wanted to try but had never prioritized. Every Thursday evening, I learned to make dishes from around the world, enjoying the company of strangers who eventually became new friends. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during my relationship with Jessica. My college roommate James and I started a tradition of monthly hiking trips, reclaiming an activity that had been tainted by Jessica's cancellations and excuses. On those trails, breathing the clean mountain air and challenging my body physically, I found moments of pure peace that had eluded me for months. Most importantly, I began dating again, cautiously at first. I met Rachel, a pediatric nurse, through a mutual friend. Unlike Jessica, she was transparent about her feelings and refreshingly direct in her communication. Though our relationship remained casual, it helped restore my faith that not all connections were destined for betrayal. At work, my focused energy resulted in a promotion. The project I had buried myself in during the worst days after discovering Jessica's betrayal turned out to be a significant success for the company, earning me recognition and a substantial raise. The professional win helped restore confidence that had been deeply shaken by Jessica's deception. Through therapy, I began to understand that while Jessica's actions were inexcusable, they were also not a reflection of my worth. My therapist helped me see that by maintaining my dignity throughout the breakup, by not resorting to vengeful destruction or public shaming, I had already demonstrated the strength of my character. You cannot control how someone treats you, my therapist told me during one particularly insightful session, but you can control how you respond, and your response says everything about who you are. 6 months after Jessica's key failed to open our apartment door, I ran into her at a coffee shop. The encounter I had been dreading for months turned out to be surprisingly anticlimactic. She looked smaller, somehow less vibrant than in my memories. We exchanged awkward hellos, and she asked if we could talk sometime. I do not think that would be helpful for either of us, I said gently but firmly. I hope you are doing well, but I have moved forward with my life." She nodded, eyes downcast. "I understand. For what it is worth, Tyler and I did not last 2 months after Mexico. You deserve so much better than what I did to you." "Yes, I did," I agreed without rancor. "Take care of yourself, Jessica." As I walked away, I realized I felt no anger, no lingering resentment. The closure I had created for myself by taking control of the situation, rather than allowing myself to be a victim of her choices, had given me something far more valuable than any conversation or explanation from her ever could. The most profound lesson from my experience with Jessica was learning to trust myself. In retrospect, my instincts had been signaling problems long before I discovered her betrayal. The subtle withdrawal of affection, the secretive phone behavior, the unexplained absences, all had triggered warning signals that I had chosen to ignore out of love and trust. I learned that respecting yourself sometimes means making difficult choices that others might view as harsh or unforgiving. The decision to change the locks and sell the car was not about revenge, but about establishing that there are consequences for betrayal, and that I valued myself enough to enforce those consequences. I discovered that forgiveness does not necessarily mean reconciliation. I eventually forgave Jessica not for her sake, but for my own peace of mind. That forgiveness did not come with an invitation back into my life. It simply meant I was releasing the anger and hurt that bound me to the past we shared. Sometimes when people ask for space, what they are really doing is creating room for their absence to become permanent. In Jessica's case, the space she requested became exactly that, a permanent separation that ultimately freed us both from a relationship that could never have survived her betrayal and my awakening. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your self-respect? How did you handle betrayal in your own life? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who might need to hear that standing up for themselves is not just okay, it is essential. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.